I still remember the exact moment my world shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. It was 3 years ago when my phone rang at 2 in the morning, and the voice on the other end told me my ex-wife had abandoned our 4-year-old daughter at a gas station 2 states away. Sophie was found sitting on a bench with a note pinned to her jacket that read simply, "I can't do this anymore." That night, as I drove through the darkness to collect my terrified little girl, I made a promise that would define every day that followed. I would be enough for her. I would be both parents, both protector and nurturer, both strength and softness. What I didn't know then was that becoming a single father wouldn't just change my life. It would completely redefine who I was as a man. The years that followed were a blur of morning routines that started before dawn, of braiding hair through tutorial videos, of learning that mac and cheese could be a vegetable if you believed hard enough, and of lying awake at night wondering if I was doing any of this right. I was Marcus Reeves, 32 years old, owner of a small vintage motorcycle repair shop, and completely devoted single father to Sophie, who was now 7 and had grown into the most resilient, beautiful soul I'd ever known. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We had breakfast dance parties in the kitchen, we had movie nights where we built blanket forts, and we had a bond that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. What we didn't have was much room for anything else, especially not romance. If you believe in second chances, in the power of a father's love, and in stories that remind us what truly matters in life, please hit that like button. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to read your thoughts. My sister Rachel had been pestering me for months to start dating again. She'd set me up on 3 different blind dates, each one more disastrous than the last. There was the woman who spent the entire dinner talking about her ex-husband, the one who admitted she didn't really like children, and the one who left halfway through when I got a call from Sophie's school about a scraped knee. After the 3rd failure, I told Rachel I was done. I didn't need romance. I had Sophie, I had my work, and I had a life that felt full enough. But Rachel was persistent, and when she invited me to her company's networking mixer at an upscale bar downtown, promising it wasn't a setup, but just a chance to get out of the house, I reluctantly agreed. The bar was everything I wasn't: polished, sophisticated, filled with people in designer clothes discussing quarterly reports and market trends. I stood near the bar nursing a whiskey, watching the crowd, and wondering how soon I could leave without disappointing my sister. That's when I saw her. She was standing with a group of women near the window, laughing at something someone had said. And when she turned, the light caught her face in a way that made me forget to breathe. She had dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, eyes that seemed to hold both mischief and intelligence, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. I watched her for probably too long before she caught me staring. She walked over with a confidence that suggested she was used to approaching strangers. And when she smiled, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: the nervous flutter of possibility. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," she said, her voice warm with amusement. I laughed because it was true. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. She tilted her head, studying me. "Let me guess. Your sister dragged you here, promised it wouldn't be painful, and now you're counting the minutes until you can escape?" The accuracy of her observation made me grin. "Rachel strikes again," I admitted. She extended her hand. "Vanessa Chen, corporate attorney, compulsive networker, and apparently skilled at reading reluctant party guests." We fell into conversation easily, surprisingly so. She was quick-witted and sharp, challenging every observation I made with a playful intelligence that kept me on my toes. We talked about everything, from the pretentious cocktail menu to the absurdity of networking events to our completely different approaches to life. She thrived in the chaos of corporate law, loved the adrenaline of high-stakes negotiations, traveled constantly for work, and seemed to move through the world with a freedom I could barely imagine. When she asked what I did, I told her about my motorcycle shop, about the satisfaction of bringing old bikes back to life, about the smell of oil and metal and the meditation of working with my hands. "That's refreshing," she said, genuinely interested. "Everyone here is trying to sell me something or pitch me an idea. You actually love what you do." I nodded. "It's not glamorous, but it's mine." She leaned against the bar, her expression curious. "So what else do you do for excitement? Race the motorcycles you fix? Travel to bike shows? You seem like the adventurous type." This was the moment I usually lost people. The moment when I had to explain that my life wasn't about adventure or spontaneity, that it was about school pickups and bedtime stories and dance recitals. But something about Vanessa's directness made me want to be equally honest. "I have a 7-year-old daughter," I said simply. "Sophie. She's my world, and honestly, she's where most of my time and energy goes." I watched Vanessa's expression shift slightly, not with judgment, but with something like recognition. "So you're a single dad," she said, and there was a note in her voice I couldn't quite read. I nodded. "Have been for 3 years now. Her mother left when Sophie was 4. Just walked away and never looked back." Vanessa was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she smiled, but it was different now. Sympathetic, kind, but also slightly distant. "That must be hard," she said. "But I have to be honest with you, Marcus. Single dads aren't really my type. I mean, they're wonderful people, obviously. But they're not exactly exciting, you know? It's all soccer games and PTA meetings and being home by 8. I'm looking for someone who can be spontaneous, who can hop on a plane to Barcelona on a Friday afternoon, who doesn't have to check a calendar before making plans." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because they were cruel, she'd said them gently, almost apologetically, but because they reduced everything I was to a limitation. In her eyes, being Sophie's father made me predictable, boring, safe in the worst way. I could have let it go, could have nodded and changed the subject and let her move on to someone more exciting. But something in me refused to accept her narrow definition of what my life meant. I looked at her directly, holding her gaze, and said with quiet confidence, "You haven't met me yet." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. "Oh, really?" I set down my glass and turned to face her fully. "You think excitement is measured in passport stamps and last-minute flights? Let me tell you about my life, Vanessa. Last week I taught my daughter to ride a bike without training wheels. You know what that requires? It requires believing she won't fall, even when you're terrified she will. It requires running alongside her, heart pounding, hands ready to catch her, while she pedals into what feels like certain disaster. And when she finally got it, when she rode 10 feet on her own and turned back to look at me with this expression of pure joy and disbelief, that was more thrilling than any adrenaline rush I've ever experienced. I could see I had her attention now. She'd stopped looking at her phone, stopped scanning the room for escape routes. 2 months ago, I continued, Sophie had a nightmare about monsters in her closet. Instead of just telling her monsters weren't real, we spent an entire Saturday building an elaborate monster trap out of cardboard boxes, string, and glitter. We set it up in her room with all the seriousness of engineers designing a spaceship. And that night, when she slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, convinced that our trap would catch any monster brave enough to try, that felt like victory. That felt like magic. Vanessa was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something between skepticism and curiosity. "Every day," I said, my voice growing more passionate, "I wake up and face challenges that require more creativity, more patience, more strength than anything else I've ever done. I negotiate with a 7-year-old who can argue like a lawyer about why dessert should come before dinner. I comfort tears over playground politics that matter more than any corporate merger. I build worlds out of blankets and imagination. I read the same story 17 times because it's her favorite, and each time I find something new in it because I'm seeing it through her eyes. You call that boring? I call that being fully alive. I took a breath, realizing I'd been speaking faster, with more intensity than I'd intended. But I wasn't done. You want spontaneity? Last month, Sophie and I were having breakfast when she asked if clouds were made of cotton candy. Instead of just explaining water vapor, we drove to the beach, packed a picnic, and spent the afternoon lying on the sand making up stories about what each cloud was made of. We decided one was definitely made of marshmallows, and another was made of whispers. We stayed until sunset, and on the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat, covered in sand and happiness. That wasn't planned. That was choosing joy in the moment, choosing to say yes to wonder. Vanessa was quiet now, really listening. I softened my tone but kept my gaze steady. Being a single dad has taught me more about courage than anything else in my life. It's taught me to be vulnerable, to admit when I don't have the answers, to ask for help, to fail publicly and try again. It's taught me to see the world through someone else's eyes, to find magic in ordinary moments, to love so fiercely that it terrifies me every single day. You think that's not exciting? You think that kind of love, that kind of daily choice to show up and be present and give everything you have, you think that's boring? I could see something shifting in her expression, a recalibration happening behind her eyes. The truth is, I said more quietly, I can't hop on a plane to Barcelona on Friday afternoon. But I can show you more genuine adventure in an afternoon at a playground than you'd find in most international trips. I can teach you to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to find excitement not in escaping life, but in diving deeper into it. The question isn't whether single dads are exciting, Vanessa. The question is whether you're brave enough to discover what real excitement actually looks like. The silence that followed felt heavy with possibility. Around us, the networking mixer continued, people laughing and exchanging business cards and playing the games that sophisticated adults play. But in our corner of the bar, something had shifted. Vanessa looked at me with new eyes, and I could see the wheels turning, old assumptions being questioned. You know what? She finally said, a small smile playing at her lips. Maybe I made an assumption I shouldn't have. Maybe I've been looking for excitement in all the wrong places. I smiled back. Or maybe you've just been defining it wrong. She laughed, a genuine sound that reached her eyes. Okay, Marcus with the motorcycle shop and the 7-year-old daughter who believes in marshmallow clouds. Prove it. Show me this extraordinary life you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo. Sophie and me from last weekend, both covered in flour after our attempt to bake cookies had turned into a full-scale food fight. We were laughing, completely ridiculous, completely happy. This is us trying to make chocolate chip cookies and ending up making memories instead. This is what exciting looks like in my world. Vanessa studied the photo, and something in her expression softened. She's beautiful, she said quietly. She has your smile. That observation, simple as it was, meant more than she could know. She's the best part of me, I admitted. Everything good in my life comes back to her. Vanessa handed back my phone, and when she looked at me again, there was a vulnerability in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I've spent so much time building my career, traveling, checking off bucket list items, she said. But honestly, I can't remember the last time I had a spontaneous picnic to discuss what clouds are made of. I can't remember the last time I did something just because it brought joy, not because it looked good on Instagram or impressed colleagues. We talked for another 2 hours, and the conversation deepened in ways I hadn't expected. She told me about the pressure she felt to always be achieving, always be ascending, always be impressive. She talked about the emptiness that sometimes crept in during quiet moments, the sense that she was chasing a definition of success that someone else had written. I told her about the grief that still surfaced sometimes, the guilt that came with wondering if I could ever be enough for Sophie, the fear that I was failing her in ways I couldn't see. We talked about our scars and our hopes, our fears and our small victories. And somewhere in that conversation, I realized that maybe excitement wasn't about the absence of routine or responsibility. Maybe it was about how fully you lived within whatever life you'd been given. When the evening ended and we stood outside the bar under the glow of streetlights, Vanessa surprised me by asking, "Would you want to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more stories about Sophie and marshmallow clouds." I smiled. Coffee sounds good, but fair warning, I can only do weekday mornings after school drop-off or Saturday afternoons. My schedule isn't flexible. She laughed. I think I can manage that. Maybe inflexibility is just another word for having priorities straight. We exchanged numbers, and as I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The possibility of someone seeing me fully and not walking away. The coffee date led to another, and then to a weekend afternoon where Vanessa met Sophie at the park. I'd been nervous about that meeting, worried that the reality of my daughter might be too much, too real, too limiting for someone like Vanessa who valued freedom above all. But watching them together, I saw something unexpected. Sophie, who was usually shy with strangers, immediately challenged Vanessa to a race to the swings. Vanessa, in her designer jeans and elegant jacket, didn't hesitate. She kicked off her heels and ran, and the sound of their laughter echoing across the playground was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in years. Afterward, as we sat on a bench watching Sophie navigate the monkey bars with fierce determination, Vanessa turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she said simply. "You were right. This is exciting. This is actually living." I took her hand, feeling the calluses from my work against her soft skin, feeling the contrast and the connection. "It's not always this perfect," I warned her. "There are hard days. There are tantrums and tears and moments when I feel like I'm drowning. There are school plays that run late and sick days that derail plans, and a constant juggling act that never stops." She squeezed my hand. "I know, but maybe perfect isn't what I need. Maybe what I need is real." If this story has touched your heart, if it's reminded you of what truly matters in life, please don't scroll past without leaving a like. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts or your own experiences with unexpected love and second chances. Your engagement helps this message reach others who might need to hear it. Thank you for being here. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were honest. Vanessa learned to navigate the chaos of our life, the early mornings and the canceled plans when Sophie got sick, the way my attention was always divided, the reality that she would never be my only priority because Sophie would always come first. Some days she struggled with it. Some days she questioned whether she could do this. But she kept showing up, kept choosing to be present, kept discovering that the life she'd thought was boring was actually full of depths she'd never imagined. She started reading Sophie bedtime stories, her voice soft and patient as she navigated the pages of fairy tales and adventures. She learned to braid hair, fumbling at first but determined to master it. She came to dance recitals and school science fairs, and I watched her slowly understand that these moments, these small, ordinary moments, were the building blocks of something extraordinary. And Sophie, beautiful, resilient Sophie, slowly opened her heart to this woman who'd entered our lives with skepticism, but stayed with commitment. One evening, about 6 months after that first conversation at the bar, the three of us were cooking dinner together in my small kitchen. Vanessa was helping Sophie stir the sauce while I chopped vegetables, and we were all singing along badly to the radio. It was chaotic and messy, with flour on the floor and Sophie's laughter filling the space. And in that moment, Vanessa looked at me across the counter and said, "You know what? You were absolutely right that night. You said single dads aren't boring, and I should have believed you immediately. This right here, is the most exciting my life has ever been." I walked around the counter and pulled her close, Sophie giggling and squirming between us. "That's because excitement isn't about what you do," I said softly. "It's about who you become while doing it. It's about choosing love even when it's inconvenient, showing up even when it's hard, and finding joy in the chaos. You've become someone who understands that, Vanessa. You've become part of our story." She kissed me then, soft and sweet, with our daughter wrapped in our arms and the smell of dinner cooking and the radio still playing in the background. And in that imperfect, beautiful moment, I knew we'd found something worth more than any adventure, any spontaneous trip, any carefully curated life could offer. Before I finish this story, I want to ask you something special. Please take a moment to comment below with just one word that describes how this story made you feel. Just one word. I'll be reading every single comment, and your words matter more than you know. Looking back now, I realize that night at the bar changed everything. Not because Vanessa was wrong about single dads being boring, but because I finally understood that I needed to stop apologizing for my life and start celebrating it. Being Sophie's father wasn't a limitation. It was my greatest adventure, my most important work, my truest self. And finding someone who could see that, who could embrace the beautiful mess of our life and choose to be part of it, that was a gift I never expected, but will be grateful for every day. The next time someone tells you that single parents aren't exciting, that they're too busy, or too limited, or too caught up in responsibility to be interesting, remember this: the people who love the deepest, who show up daily, who choose commitment over convenience, those are the most exciting people you'll ever meet. They've learned what truly matters. They've discovered that real adventure isn't about escaping your life, but about diving fully into it. And that kind of courage, that kind of love, that kind of daily heroism, that's the most exciting thing in the world. We're still building our story, the three of us. There are still challenges and adjustments and moments when we have to figure things out as we go. But we're doing it together, and every day we're discovering new ways to find excitement in the ordinary, magic in the mundane, and joy in simply choosing each other. Because that's what love is, not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of commitment. Not the escape from responsibility, but the embrace of it. And in that embrace, in that daily choice to show up and be present and give everything we have, we've found more excitement, more meaning, and more happiness than we ever imagined possible. So to anyone out there who's been told they're too much or not enough, too complicated or too simple, too tied down or too free, know that you are exactly who you need to be. Your life, with all its beautiful imperfections and daily challenges, is the adventure. And the right person won't see your circumstances as limitations. They'll see them as the very things that make you extraordinary. Just like Vanessa learned to see, and just like I finally learned to believe. We're all worth the choice. We're all worth the commitment. We're all exciting enough, just as we are.